So a few days ago, I was sitting alone on a park bench in my friend's apartment complex. And slowly over the next 10 minutes, a group of old ladies began to gather around the nearby benches. One auntie came first, then another, then three more, and eventually this tiny parliament formed around me without realizing that I was listening. At first, it sounded ordinary: blood pressure, somebody's son in America, knee pain. Then suddenly there was a turn in the conversation, and one of them leaned forward and said, "Did you hear about Shilpa from L Block?" Immediately the others turned. Apparently, Shilpa had injured herself, a hairline fracture on her shoulder or something, and the reason was that she had joined a rock climbing gym. So there was this brief silence, and then one of them went, "At this age?" And everybody gave this half sympathetic, half disapproving nod. And eventually somebody said, "It's nice to try new things, but at this age?" And sitting there, listening to them, I suddenly realized something. The woman telling the story had power, and the group had power. Not political power. But what if I told you that this little circle of women is running on the exact same logic as wars, revolutions, and the rise and fall of entire civilizations? Now, Hegel's a 19th century German philosopher. He's very difficult to read. He came up with something called the dialectic, and it has three parts: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So now let's run the aunties through it. Thesis is the existing state, not just beliefs, but behavior, the way things are. So for the group, thesis is this: we are women of a certain age, we live a certain kind of life, and this is what normal life looks like. We don't go to rock climbing gyms, and you don't risk injury for the thrill of it. Life has a rhythm, and you respect it. Now, this is not actually written down anywhere, nobody voted on it, but everybody in the group knows it. And crucially, if someone did not know it, they would not last in the group. Now, into this very stable, very comfortable thesis enters Shilpa. Shilpa is the antithesis. She didn't mean to be, she just went to a climbing gym, but her action, a perfectly ordinary choice, goes against the group's reality. She represents a different way of being, a different set of assumptions about what a woman her age should or shouldn't do. And that's all antithesis needs to be. It just has to contradict. Now, synthesis is what happens when thesis meets antithesis. The friction, the negotiation, the reality that gets produced when these two meet. And in this case, the synthesis is the gossip. Think about what the gossip is actually doing. It's not just sharing news, it's processing Shilpa. It's the group collectively deciding what to make of her. Whether she gets absorbed into the current narrative, oh, you know, Shilpa, she's always a little extra, or whether she gets quietly pushed to the margins. And this does affect Shilpa on the other side. The minute she finds out that they've been talking, and she will, she faces a choice. Does she show up less? Does she stop sharing personal things? Does she dial back on the adventurousness? Does she show up even more and dare them to say something to her face? Now, there are infinite choices, but the gossip has already changed the structure of her social world. That's not nothing, that is power. This group, without meaning to, without a manifesto or a meeting or even awareness of what they're doing, governs. Hegel also talks about geist, usually translated as spirit. It's the animating force that keeps a collective alive and coherent. Every society, every institution, every group of park bench aunties has one. For this group, the geist is probably this: we exist to make sense of the world together. We are a barrier against the chaos and boredom of ordinary life. That's not a small thing, by the way. That is deeply human. But for the geist to survive, it needs fuel, it needs information, contradiction, it needs a Shilpa. So immediately, and this is important, gossip stops being a side effect of the group. It becomes the mechanism by which the group stays alive. Consider the individual members now. Every single one of them has an incentive to bring something good to the circle: interesting information, a well told story, a sharp observation, because whoever holds the best information, like our auntie with the Shilpa scoop, holds, even briefly, the power. Hegel calls this the master dynamic. It's not a permanent role, but in that moment, she has the room. The others want that too, but they don't fight over it. They can't, because the whole thing only works if it stays civil. So the competitive urge gets sublimated, preserved but redirected into one-upping each other with better stories or maybe better observations or better jokes. Hegel calls this sublation, the process where something doesn't get destroyed but gets lifted into a higher form. The wolf pack instinct becomes drawing room manners. And here's the thing that really got me. When the auntie delivers the Shilpa story, she doesn't just say Shilpa broke her shoulder. She doesn't stop with the fact. She lets the strangeness of rock climbing hang in the air for a second. She lets the group feel the wrongness of it before anyone has even said a word. She is not reporting, she is interpreting. She is taking raw information and running it through the group's thesis and handing it back, neatly wrapped and validated. She embodies the geist. In that moment, she is the group's purpose made audible. And everybody leans in because she's not just telling them about Shilpa, she's telling them that their way of seeing the world is correct. That's the service she's performing. And it's why she's briefly, as Hegel would say, the master. Now, these women are not silly and they're not wasting time. They're using contradictions to define themselves. They're using the antithesis to sharpen the thesis. which means every time they shake their heads and say, at this age, they are in Hegelian terms doing exactly what every civilization, every revolution, every idea in history has done. They are surviving. Next time you go into the same bench, the same aunties, the same Shilpa, and look at it through the eyes of Schopenhauer. And I promise you it gets darker and much, much more honest.